The kids need to remember what happened here, because when you don't know your history, a lot of things repeat themselves. I attended Stratford 1964 to 1967. I came from the community of Halls Hill, which was like a village for us. It was a community that was like 100% black at that time. And coming here, we had to walk all the way down it's Langston Boulevard now to Old Dominion to get here, almost probably close to a 2-mile walk. But, the buses didn't pick us up. We had to walk every day. We were pretty prepared, coming from Langston Elementary. And so I came here to Stratford, and it was just a new environment. There was like 17 blacks in my class, and approximately somewhere 200 to 300 students at Stratford at the time, I think. And we blended in the classes and stuff like that. And, like anything, you have your good people, your bad people, and your really bad people. But, for the most part, everybody treated us pretty well. There were many unknowns. A lot of people, a lot of the white kids, they hadn't been around black kids. They didn't know. And I was in class one day, I think it was English class, and I flipped my hand over, and the girl said, "Look at his hands." And I'm trying to think, what's going on? So I guess she thought that the inside of my hand would be the same color as my outer skin. And, my hands were like light and pink, pretty much like hers. And so, just discovering stuff about each other, that was a part of, getting used to being here at Stratford and learning about each other and doing stuff together. And, made a lot of friends during that time. I had one friend, a guy from New York, a guy named Doug Grimes. There was a band called the Cherry People. They played at the Keg up in Georgetown. Like, he was in junior high school. So we convinced the administrative staff to let them play here in the gym. So we had a party, I think one Friday afternoon after school. The Cherry People played, and we danced and had a ball and everything. And that was like a pretty memorable event for me. For the most part, we didn't have a lot of trouble. There was some that tried to start stuff with you and stuff like that. And, of course, the famous tunnel over here, which is closed now, we went through that tunnel to get home, sit across an Old Dominion Drive. And so sometimes on the other side of the tunnel, it would be a group waiting for us, wanting to fight. So we always traveled in numbers because we knew something could happen anywhere. And, at least maybe probably once every 2 weeks on the other side of the tunnel, we had to fight. We kind of got a reputation because we weren't playing with them either. But there was a group, they call them greasers. They had the hair slicked back like the Fonz. They wore leather coats and chains and engineer boots and everything. And I guess maybe their older siblings probably had motorcycles and everything. They had that look like they were tough. And a lot of them weren't, they just had the look. But, as time went on, we got along with them and everything. One guy named, I think it's Woody Prouty, he became, friends with all of us and everything. And another guy named Marty Story. Marty Story, we got so close with him that if we had a fight, he was on our side over there fighting, against the ones that, that were trying to give us the trouble and everything. And then, of course, we had to walk all the way back up Old Dominion and Lee Highway back home. And people closed their doors like we were going to rob them or something like that. And sometimes they wind the window down and they call us everything but our names. And we had the CVS, it was called People's Drugstore then. We would stop at there sometimes and get like a cherry smash. We weren't allowed to sit at the fountain. You had to go to the inner counter and get your cherry smash and pretty much, go home. Here at Stratford, there were two black teachers. Mr. Green, he taught science. He was also the former pastor at Alpha Street Baptist Church in Alexandria. And Mr. Halstead, he was our industrial arts shop teacher, and his wife was our librarian at Langston School prior to coming here to Stratford. And he taught us woodwork, plastic, and metals. I was like 5 years behind the first students that came here, so same with going to W&L. My brother, he was one of the first to play sports at Washington Lee High School. He played football. David Ruffner, along with Ronnie Deskins and a few others. They were at a guy they called Jerome Green, and the nickname at Meathead. All of them, they were the first to play football. I came into W&L in '67, and that merged the students from Stratford, Swanson, and I think some from South Arlington. We had great teachers. They were all very caring and wanted to make sure that all of us succeeded, and gave us a lot of skills and stuff, to live by. The kids need to remember what happened here in 1959 and, kind of know your history, know where you come from, because when you don't know your history, a lot of things repeat themselves. So you have to be aware of where you come from, what happened before, and right now in these times we're living in, a lot of things are changing, and certain people are trying to change it real fast. So do your best to be the best you can in this country.
When I came here in seventh grade, it was 1971. We had a good group of kids. I mean, Halls Hill we had a large, I think, contingent of kids here. I remember most of my time here at Stratford just being very focused on trying to fit in. It was a very different dynamic than what I experienced at Reed. I look fondly back at my time, but I also remember the angst that I had of school here and not really being one of the cool kids, but I enjoyed my classes. From the sports and all of that perspective, that was really, really good for me because we got to do things that were not available like at the elementary level. The pools opened when I was in the 8th grade. When I was in the 9th grade, I actually swam competitively for the first time. And I do remember my science teacher, who was the first one to actually kind of open my eyes. Even though it was a science class, we learned social science as well. So Stratford was eye-opening in some ways, but it was also very challenging for me because of the whole transitioning from elementary to middle school and not having that really comforting environment. Because I don't think from the perspective of a young Black girl here at Stratford, there was no DEI, there was no one to really, from a cultural perspective, kind of make sure that we had a soft landing here. I knew Mrs. Ham very, very well because when we were young children, Carmela and I were very close friends. Carmela's backyard pretty much almost touches my parents' backyard. And her parents also went to the same church as my mom. So Carmela and I spent a lot of time together. I remember they had a Riviera, a white Riviera with a black vinyl top. And it was a coupe, it wasn't a sedan. Everybody I knew had sedans. And her mother would make us sit in the back seat. And I'd be like, I don't like riding places with your mama because I could sit in the front seat with my dad because all of this was before seat belts and baby seats and everything. But her mother was very into whatever the science was of the safest and the best and that kind of thing. So I would say that she was very comfortable interacting with and engaging with the white people because she was one of those people who made it a point to go out and engage other groups. Very focused on making sure that her children and thereby the other Black children in the Halls Hill neighborhood and also, Black Arlington overall had the same types of opportunities that white children had. So she definitely made an impact on me in terms of her ability to engage and to create community with other groups who were kind of outside our neighborhood.
We were fortunate coming from a community where it was kind of close-knit. They gave us great preparation for what they thought was about to come and what did happen, actually. Like, we were some of the younger ones. It was 30 of us that applied, and we were, 6th graders, And we were a little apprehensive, but, from the little training that we got from our churches and from the leaders, they just prepared us well for what was about to happen. They had a thing early on about how Black kids weren't intelligent as white kids, things like that. But it didn't take long to figure out I was just as smart as the other kids here, and there were some smarter than me, but there were a lot that were not as smart, And so I figured that out early on, that I was academically prepared. The most we got here was just, some kids would call you names and stuff like that early on, but that didn't really last too long because After we got out and other kids came in, they took it personally. So it was, scraps here and there, after, later on down the line. But I received a great education. I learned a lot, took good classes. Looking back now, I said, I wish I'd become a better student early on. Now, later on that happened. I became a student later on, but it was only after I really got to college and they woke me up and said, you got to study to stay in here. And I had to leave college after a year. And then once I left, I had to get a job. I went to, it was during the time of the Vietnam War. I went to Vietnam for a while, served there, but I got GI benefits after that. And I came back, went to Northern Virginia College for a couple of years, and then I ended up graduating from Fordham University of New York. I went to Fordham, went to work for Mutual Omaha for a year, and then from there I went to the CIA. And I worked at the CIA for an entire after 20-some years. And I don't know if that would have happened if I hadn't been at Stratford and gone to integrated schools. I don't know if that would have been my course. Lance went on to become an engineer, lived in California, Ronnie became a fireman, retired from the fire department. Gloria, she's still in Baltimore, still in the educational field. So we all did well, I would think. I would say, take advantage of opportunities, Study hard and do the best you can, You don't know where life will take you, but you have more opportunities now than when we first started. So, just do the best you can.
For me, it's awesome to be back here. I just remember even pulling up thinking, I don't even know where to park because when I was here, I didn't drive, so I didn't have to know where the parking spaces were. So I had to kind of figure out where to park. But once I figured that out, it just took me back to that 13, 16-year age range of walking the hallways and being able to see that some of the flooring in the walls are even still the same. I remember Mrs. Ham. And I remember how very engaged in community activities she was. I remember her coming to my parents' house and them signing petitions for certain things. And so I remember that experience. I was friends with Wilma, and so Wilma and I went to the same church, and I remember going to their house. But I felt like it was a very family-oriented experience, and I think that a lot of people, even though they don't live there anymore, I think are very well connected. And so there's not too much that goes on there that people that live outside of there don't know about because people sort of keep you updated on what's going on, and that's the thing that I like. Even though I knew Michael Jones, for example, and that family, when I entered the doors here at Stratford, I didn't remember any of that. That history wasn't there. And I think about the history and the experiences that he may have had in that group that came then versus when I came years later. I don't remember there being any sort of race issues, color issues, or any of those things. I felt like everybody sort of blended together. I think for the most part, just like everywhere, people have their own tribes, and tribes kind of hung together, but more so at lunchtime. And I can think of a number of friends that I made then that I subsequently went on to high school with, and I'm still in contact with some of those people today. What I would say to students today is relish and take advantage of the experience that you're getting here in Northern Virginia, because I think that we take it for granted. I feel like when I was growing up here, it was sort of taken for granted until you go outside of the Northern Virginia community and you see what's happening in other schools and other communities and what's happening in school systems. And I think that Arlington County is a very progressive county. I think it's a very inclusive county. And I think sometimes when you're in the throes of it, you don't appreciate it as much until you go away. Like, I went to school in Norfolk, and I immediately realized how very different Norfolk was than Northern Virginia. And so I would really encourage the students to just kind of look around at some of the things that they may take for granted now and realize when they go outside of the bubble of Northern Virginia, it may not necessarily be the same way. And what they're getting now, I think, will be skills that they can carry with them for the rest of their lives. And I feel even better about it now, knowing that history that's behind it and knowing that I had the opportunity to walk the halls here.
I just wanted to come in and say quick words on behalf of my cousin, Ronnie Deskins, and my aunt, his mother, Welby Mann, we call her Aunt Peggy. They were very active in the community over in Arlington, near the fire station. And Ronnie was a great guy, firefighter, chief, and just a wonderful guy. His mother would push the community a lot to get selective service, people active and getting government jobs. They talk a lot about Ronnie and them, but she was really a force too in the neighborhood. I'm 1965. I actually didn't know all this stuff was going on until I was much older. I went to Taylor Elementary, Williamsburg Intermediate School, and then I graduated from Yorktown. I lived on Edison Street. I was born in Arlington Hospital, which was at the time. It's kind of strange because my college roommate, the same exact day, September 15, 1965, they didn't let his mother give birth at the hospital. They let my mom give birth at the hospital. It's kind of crazy. Same day, same neighborhood. I was born at Arlington Hospital. I think have friends with anyone, no matter what, and then just grow along with those friendships. They last for years. It's great. It's the best part of your life, really.
It was very important for us to be, to set a real good example when we went there. And certainly not to get into any sort of trouble, and to avoid it. And if it came to you in a verbal sense, basically to ignore it. And that if anybody were to call you a name or something like that, this was an ignorant person. And you just treat them as such. Actually, feel sorry for them because they didn't really know, their knowledge was limited.
I'll tell you, when I walked in the door, I was so surprised to see the changes, but some things are still the same. The lockers look new, but they're still in the same locations, still at the same height. I was surprised at how small everything looks, which I'm sure everyone will say. But I was so glad to see that the school still looks the same, but different. So it's not totally foreign to me. The Dorothy Ham, as you enter the door up on the building, is awesome because I knew her. I grew up in the same neighborhood. She lived down the street. I'm close friends with her daughter, Carmela. So all of those feelings just kind of washed over me. And it's just been awesome to be back here and to see people that I know, Wilma Jones, the Ruffners, to see my great-great-grandparents, my ancestors up on the posters in the hallway. It's just been a great experience so far. Well, I'm so proud of our name. I'm so proud to be a Pelham. And our ancestors, our family runs deep in this county. There was once upon a time a Pelham town, which if you do some research on, you can read, more about. Moses Pelham, the Mount Salvation Baptist Church, the Spriggs family were all intertwined and have been such a large part of the community. My grandfather, William H. Pelham, was the dean of the deacon board at Mount Salvation Baptist Church in Arlington and was a pillar of the community, lived to be 102 years old. And if you ask anybody who's been around for a little while, they can tell you all about Deacon Pelham and his wife, Frances. So it's just been awesome to be able to come back to the neighborhood to see. It's changed so much, that Halls Hill Highview Park area, but some things still remain the same. Students here gave us a tour, and I remember being down in the basement and walking out to one of the huge glass pane windows now that's relatively new. And I said to one of them, I said, that's where the cheerleaders used to practice, because I was a cheerleader when I was here. And they said, oh, they still practice there. I said, oh, awesome. I'm glad to know that. I'm glad. So some things are different, but some things stay the same. I would tell them to pursue their dreams. I always wanted to be a writer when I was here.
Always wanted to pursue it in some form or fashion, whether it be with a newspaper or on television, and I never did. I stayed in communications, but I went in another area. And all of a sudden during COVID, my book materialized. So never, that little seed that you feel, that little thing that you want to do, whatever it is, don't be afraid to pursue it because you have time. It seems like you don't, but you have time to do it, and just go for it and do it. Pursue it. Pursue whatever dream it is. Don't let anybody stop you from doing that. This is our Mother's Love, Loss, and Legacy. It was written with several women. 3 of them actually graduated from Stratford. One of them, Camilla Ham, is out there. She wrote a chapter about her mother. We all wrote chapters about our moms and our relationship with our mothers, good, bad, or indifferent, as a way to help other women or people who are coping with the loss of their mothers, how they deal with that. So it's all about the beginning, the love, and then the loss of that mom and the legacy they left you and your family. So there are reader notes in here for people to take notes along the way. There's some history in here from my family and also from Camilla's family, and 2 other women, Karen McCall and Melissa Rutz-Mumma, who also graduated from Stratford Junior High. During the past few years, several friends have mourned the loss of their mothers. We talk about the impact it has had on our lives. What can we say to others that may provide comfort or help those who will eventually know this loss to power through it? I asked a handful of these friends to share their reflections and observations in what life is like as they navigate the future without the woman who gave them life. Their writings are here, as are my reflections. There are a few contributors who chose to remain anonymous. They had complicated relationships with their mothers, and even though she's gone, they want to protect the relationship by not subjecting her memory to public scrutiny. The child does become the parent. I pray that you find comfort in the words and experiences shared through these pages. We offer our stories to help you now, or when the time comes, navigate this, the true mother of all losses. Peace and blessings to you.
So Mrs. Ham, I used to deliver newspapers to her. That's one of the things I remember. And of course, I know her kids, all of them. Mrs. Syfax, her husband, Archie Syfax, he was a lieutenant, was one of the original African-American firefighters at Station 8. And then another, Ronnie Deskin's dad, Carol Deskins, was one of the original firefighters at Station 8. Everybody knew everybody, and it was very much of a family thing. Those gentlemen, you made sure you mind your business and behave because they would tell your dad or they would take care of you themselves. So Station 8, because of its geographical location on that time on Lee Highway, it was like a hub, the community center hub. When the kids went to HB, Stratford, at the time, that's kind of where they let out from. So if you wanted some information, that's where you would get all that information. Being a little younger than the people who integrated, you have a different experience, a totally different experience. And probably some similarities that I just wasn't aware of. I have 3 kids, 3 sons, and they all graduated from Yorktown, and they're 3 years apart, and their experiences are different. So it doesn't take long before experiences can be vastly different depending on your age. One story, a fire department story, I'll tell you that's connected to the community. So we lived on Culpeper Street when I was born, my parents did. And it was 1961, and I could not be born at Arlington Hospital because they didn't allow black people there. So I had to go to Freedman's Hospital, like other people in the community. And again, you don't know things when you're growing up because nobody told me until later on. So I was one of the first black paramedics on Arlington Fire Department. And I used to think about, I'm transporting to a hospital that wouldn't even allow me to be born there. My dad actually is he's the last living volunteer from Fire Station 8. He actually joined the volunteer fire department before he was actually legal to ride. Because I guess you had to be 18 or 21, I can't remember the age. And that was his entree into, community service and assisting people. And those guys there not only became his friends, but, some of them like father figures. And so they would be my grandfather figures, So it's just a big family connection.
I was a ninth grader at Stratford, and I was also editor of our student newspaper. And because they had police lines so that no media, no reporters could get within certain yards of our school, trying to keep this a normal day, they didn't have anybody to cover that day. And the Washington Post, smart as they are, called our journalism teacher, Mrs. Hamilton, and said, "Can we use your editors of the newspaper to observe during the day, and we'll take them down to the Post and we'll write about it?" And Helen Dewar, who was a well-known reporter at the Post, brought us in, put us in a conference room, gave us 2 tablets and 2 pencils. And she said, "I'll be back. You put down what happened, really." And she came back, I bet, in 30 minutes, and there were 2 13-year-olds with 2 blank papers and 2 pens in their hand, and we hadn't written a thing. Do you know why we didn't have anything written down? Because we never saw them. No one we knew saw them. There wasn't really anyone that we found that had the understanding of the momentous thing that was happening, nor cared if there were 4 Black children coming in. And basically, we were embarrassed because we couldn't make something up, like we saw a scuffle or people were so excited about having a Black in our school. It just was not what we found. And I honestly think much of the resistance were from people who were outside of Stratford and, didn't have kids in Stratford and maybe didn't even have school children. But I also know from my parents working with some of the Black community, the churches were very strong in those days, and the people that were picked, they were trained, they were given a lot of love and support by the Black community. They even had, so that they wouldn't miss their friends, they even had activities after Stratford. I'm so amazed at the bravery of 4 little 7th graders.
On the 17th of May, 1956, we filed our first suit in court. We were sponsored by the NAACP. And one of the things that was used against my son, which really upset me, was that when I raised the question that he wouldn't be loved, that really disturbed me because I was sending him to school not only to be loved, but to be taught.
My mother always said she did these things because it was the right thing to do. She didn't do this for accolades. She would be tickled pink to know that this school was named after her. She grew up in Bellows Crossroad, Virginia. They were originally from Caroline County, and she was a fighter, a go-getter, She would never take no for an answer, and as a young kid, I always said I wanted to go to Stratford, and she told me I couldn't, and I would always say, "Why can't I come here?" Well, I was in the second group of students that came in September '59. The integration in Arlington was a lot more peaceful than most places. Our biggest thing was name calling, and that was kind of the first year or so. After that, once they understood that we didn't have tails and everything on us, we met some decent people, made some friends. I was an athlete, and even though the schools were integrated, we weren't allowed to participate in sports. We could not play football, no contact sports. It was until 61 or 62 they allowed Blacks to play organized sports here in Arlington County. They shielded us from some stuff. I do remember up at Lee Highway and Harrison Street, there used to be a pony ring there. I'd always try to get them to stop so I could go in, and they wouldn't. Never wanted to tell me that because I was a Black kid, I couldn't go in. But, they made excuses. We didn't have time, or maybe next time, something like that. But, those are just some of the things that we remembered in segregated Arlington. Once we got into Halls Hill, we felt comfortable, we felt safe. We didn't worry about too much, It was a community. Our philosophy was don't start nothing, won't be nothing. I still contribute to the Horse Hill Turkey Bowl every November, which has been going on for probably 40 years or so. You know, most of the guys that grew up on Horse Hill played in that game. Alfred Foreman and Gene Bell, Sherman Anderson, and my older brother, they sponsored it for many years and refereed and everything. And I kind of stepped in and took it over, sponsored it for 10 or 15 years, and I've kind of passed the torch. And I'm still living in Horse Hill, and I'm proud of it. And it's something that, you know, we're going to pass on the legacy of it.
My tribute to Four Little Heroes. It was the 2nd of February, 1959, that our 4 black students faced the police line. There the police stood with billets in hand, ready to attack if given the command. But these brave students walked gallantly through, not stopping to think what the enemy might do. They were simply walking to Stratford Junior High that day, arms full of books, not knowing what to say. 4 7th graders with a future in mind, a future for them that had been made hard to find. 3 little black boys and a black girl too made history that day for themselves and for you.